Gems under the scope. They criticize these quotes, scoff at our past and try to hand us the rope. But we swinging right past, and not for nothing, but you will never see us crash, cause we Cardi with the couth. Rhapsody in the booth, she got game when she shoot. Light as a rock, now watch me pass you all this truth. In life we beat feet like Monday commuters. We write rhymes on paper bags and dirty computers. Put Janelle and Moni in the middle and watch these queens calm the shooters. We are mothers, sisters, cousins, and best friends. Nurturers, lovers, and still swift with these pens. It be like bar drops and breast milk, fire lines and hot meals, food for the soul and a shoulder to lean for when that soul need to heal. It's kind of like the way a 16 moves me. I fell in love with hip hop and to protect it is my duty. I had a crush on you since down like four flats, since Mecca B fly because she cool like that. We putting purpose in these verses, lacing these beats with the facts. Paper planes when I scribe, getting my A in these tracks. I'm Roxy and I am hip hop.
What's good? It's your favorite hood chick, and I am hip hop.
Peace. I am Sarah Zavala and I am hip hop.
What made me fall in love with hip hop? Ooh. What made me fall in love with hip hop? Hip hop. Hip hop made me fall in love with hip hop. Everything about hip hop was so fresh, it was so new, it was inviting. Everything, the style, the cadence, the coolness of it, the smoothness, the ability to tell a real story. I remember going to a party with my family, of course. I was young, and Planet Rock had just came out. And I remember being in the party, how everybody ran to the dance floor. And that was the first hip-hop record that the DJ that was playing at the party played. And at this time, hip-hop was deemed bad, was said it wasn't gonna last, and it was devil's music, and whatever. But the DJ played that record, and everybody ran to the dance floor. And I was like, oh. And I think that record might have been like 10 minutes long. It was a long record, but people danced the whole record, and I was like, ooh, this is really, really dope. So yeah, hip hop made me fall in love with hip hop. Everything about it, the breakdancing, the dancing, the DJing, the MCing, the graffiti. I think we was rebels with a cause. We was rebels with a cause. We just didn't give a what. Shouts to hip hop. Shouts to hip hop.
What made me fall in love with hip hop was not one thing. It's such a big, beautiful culture that you can't just say it's one thing. But Slick Rick's children's story, my preteen self thought it was dope how you're telling this kind of fucked up street tale over this upbeat track, and you were bobbing your head to it, and it was reaching an audience that probably didn't care to hear the story. It got to suburbia, and I respected that. I thought it was dope, and that kind of hooked me. But it's the little things that you don't really, it's not concrete. It's your friend who's the DJ that plays the right record for the right crowd and seeing their reaction. It's your friends killing it on stage. It's the feeling of a live concert, the vibe of a live concert, the graffiti artist tagging their name deliberately and beautifully on a wall. the producer finding the right sounds to make the masterpiece of a beat. It's just the brilliance of it all, how it all comes together. The breaker freezing at the right point to make the impact. So I'm falling in love with hip hop more and more every day. It doesn't just end.
My love affair with hip hop, it was like a long, intricate road on the way to getting there. It's kind of a long story. I'm going to try to condense it. But basically, I think the first time I ever heard hip hop was NWA. And it was one of my dad's friends' friends. They had this big house. And I don't know if the mom used to rent rooms or if she used to just let her kids' friends stay. I really don't know what that was about. But I know that there was a kid there, and he was renting the room or staying in the room, and I went to go upstairs and I walked past and I just heard all this cursing coming from a song, and I was amazed. I'm like, that is spicy. So I went and I sat by the door and I put my little ear to the door, and I was listening in amazement. But that was that. And then I think the next time is, I heard OPP on the radio. And I remember my dad making a joke about it. He was like, what is this song? I gotta go PP. I'm like, that was that. And then, I heard different songs here and there. But I think that the love really started when I discovered my love of poetry. And with that, I had wanted to watch Poetic Justice, at like 12. But of course, it was R-rated. My mom was not having it. But one day she left, and it just so happened that it came on the TV. So I sat down and I watched it. And I just thought it was amazing how, in the movie, the character, Janet Jackson's character, Justice, she could just turn anything into a poem no matter how she was feeling. And then that's when I, first got introduced to Tupac. And I just loved him in the film. So I wanted to know, like, everything about him, And that was, like, the first time I ever started writing poetry was right after I saw that movie. And so, those two things started it off. And then, I used to go to my grandma's house in the weekend. And that's when I discovered The Box. And, all these different hip-hop artists were coming on. And I remember one day they had like a special making of music video behind the scenes, and I thought it was kind of cool to watch stuff like that. So I turned it on, and it just so happened it was the making of the One Love video by Nas. And I just thought that shit was dope. And so I watched the making of it, and then I listened to the song. And I was like, man, I kind of like this. And it just so happened I had bought one of them like teen magazines, and he had a small little article like this big in the thing. And I remember, they said his name, was Nasir. I was like, oh. I was like, I like that name. I'm going to name my son that when I have a baby. And I did. I was 12 years old and I said that, and I did. Shouldn't have been thinking about that. But anyway, so, from that, I started listening to Nas. Like, I listened to certain parts of Illmatic. I was not listening to albums all the way through back then because I was still young. I was only like 12, 13. And I was still writing poetry, and I was a real big fan of Mary J. Blige back in the day, like huge fan. And so she is the one that kind of pulled me in even further because of the song she did with Jay, Can't Knock the Hustle. So I was probably about 14 when that song came out, and I remember being at my friend's house, and we was in the other room and we was watching music videos, and from the distance I heard that la-dee-da-da-da. You know how she be doing. And I was like, man, that's a Mary. I know that voice. I knew that voice from anywhere. So I rushed into the living room. And, I thought it was going to be, one of her songs because that's the first time I had ever heard Can't Knock the Hustle. But then, Jay come in. I was like, oh, okay. I'm like, who's this? So, and I don't know. I just became amazed by that fusion that, that hip hop and R&B, so I was not one of the people that kind of slept on Reasonable Doubt. I'm going to be honest. I went and bought Reasonable Doubt because Mary J. Blige was on that song. I bought Reasonable Doubt for Can't Knock the Hustle. But that is probably the first album I went ahead and listened to all the way through. I just let it play. I think I might have been punished one day and I couldn't come out my room. And I was like, I'm just going to let this thing play. And I was amazed just at his flow and how he put those words together. And so that is what really made me fall in love with hip hop, was that, because I took that and I was like, man, I want to write like that. I don't want to just keep writing about these little 13 and 14-year-old boys breaking my heart, because that was like the basis of my poetry back then. And, once I discovered, you know, just that fusion, that hip hop, that cadence, I studied that, and I was like, man, this is what I want my poetry to sound like. I don't want it to sound like this old sad, oh my God, you know, he broke my heart and I'm never gonna live anymore. I wanted it to detail my life. And that's what I found through hip hop, through listening to these songs. This detailed their everyday life, things they've been through, you know, things they came up out of. And, you know, that was just what I was attracted to. Now add a woman into that mix, you know, making songs that I can relate to. That's why representation of women in hip hop is important to me, because, you know, yeah, I love, you know, Jay, Nas, all them, but sometimes they can't make a song to me about what it feels like to, you know, have cramps, or, you know, get her, you know, their heart broken by a man. You know, I need that woman's perspective sometimes. And that's why, you know, I look to artists, you know, MC Lyte, you know, Queen Latifah, Eve, Lil Kim, you know, there's time for everything. You know, sometimes, yeah, I do want to be on my, you know, lyrical, like I want to dig deep Rhapsody, and, you know, I love that. But then sometimes I want to turn up Lil Kim, Cardi B, you know, I love that, you know, we can do everything, you know, and it's like no longer put in that box anymore, like where women have to be like this one way. We can be sexual, you know, we can be mad, we can be loving, we can be nurturing, we can be mothers, we can be best friends. And then sometimes we can say, you know what, the hell with you and everything that you're going through. And so, yeah, representation is definitely very important. But yeah, that's definitely how I fell in love with hip hop, is that whole little trail, you know, probably from the time I was 9 up until I was like 14, when I was like, oh, I'm never gonna let you go ever.